Alright, so I know there's some dead pixels in the screen there, maybe bear with me here. Hi there, Coach Sage of SageRunning.com here with a training talk. We'll call this kind of a rant. It's probably going to be kind of long. It's probably going to be kind of boring. You might not like it, but I did notice in one of my the last vlog, this was a top-rated comment, top upvoted comment. Sage, what have you learned in the last 5 or 6 years with your own running, but also I think in general with the YouTube channel? Again, I've been making running-related content on this YouTube channel for over 10 years. A full decade now. I actually had another channel before. I think it was closer to 11 years ago, but really enjoyed doing that and throwing in, spending a lot of time on this social media platform. One of the things I will talk about, the evolution of social media and running, especially in the last 5 or 6 years. But again, realize that I have been, making these running videos for over 10 years. And, it was hard for me to sit down and look at myself honestly in the mirror and question this, and I almost didn't want to make this video because I tend to be kind of, critical, and I didn't want to be too pessimistic and not optimistic enough. I want to be positive and share knowledge, not too defeatist in this approach. So I sat down and I questioned myself, Sage, what did you learn in this last 5 or 6 years? And, it really struck home that maybe I've actually gotten dumber over the last 5 or 6 years, and that I've been extremely ignorant and ignored a lot of things, put on the blinders, right? I didn't learn from my mistakes. I believe that's one of the definitions of stupidity or insanity, is to repeat the same thing over and over and expect a different result. And it's led to some, a lot of failures, but there's also been a lot of good things along the way. And I realized my own ignorance in the fact that, I believe we should always be learning, lifelong learning and gaining knowledge. And I realized that maybe I haven't been reading enough books. I haven't been listening to enough podcasts. And I'll get into the validity of media and the, sharing of scientific studies or articles and how, knowledge is spread. And some of it could be good or bad. But you have to question your facts and scientific strength of certain statements and things like that. So that's what we'll get into in this training talk rant, and I'm digressing already, getting off on too many tangents. So lesson number one, point number one, in the last 5 or 6 years, I admit that I've probably not learned enough. I've not read enough books. I've not read or listened to enough podcasts. I've not looked at enough scientific studies. But at the same time, and this will go into my second point, you can't believe everything you see on the internet or in the news or by an expert, so to speak. So even like this YouTube video, right? There's a lot of misinformation out there, and I think social media has amplified that out. Not just in terms of like running advice, nutrition, diet advice, general health advice, but all sorts of things from life hacks and taking shortcuts, and people's just stating their personal opinion, which is okay if you want to state your opinion, if you want to question authority. But you want to be able to back that up with a lot of good evidence, and hopefully that's strong scientific evidence, right? I'm a big numbers guy, big numbers geek. I believe in supporting a statement with a lot of evidence, and part of that evidence is having a knowledge base of cutting edge current research, and also things that have happened in the past, learning lessons from the past. So with my own running, with my own mistakes, that's kind of more in the training theory type of thing. But lesson number two is you can't trust everything you see on media online, for example. The validity isn't always there. There's a lot of sensationalist headlines, right? Lose weight on this diet, run, way faster by doing this certain type of workout. It's usually not that easy. There's usually more variables at play, in my experience and opinion, I'd say. You have to be patient. It's distance running is usually a really long-term process. Progression isn't always linear. You get more fit, and then you have a setback, and then you try to train more and consistently, and then maybe overall you've progressed, but maybe not. And my progression, I'll admit, has been slower. I've been running year-round for 20 years, and of course with the whole OTQ series, you've seen a lot of my failures in the road marathon, and making the same mistake, I'd say, of doing too many races in a season, but also doing the any service, any distance. And I ordered this book from David Epstein. He wrote The Sports Gene, but he also wrote a book about how it's good to be maybe a generalist and thrive as a generalist in a world of specialists, right? And I like to think, oh, when I do any service, any distance, I'm kind of doing that. I'm just having fun because I like mountain ultra trail running, and I also like road marathon running still. But, changing from a mountain race, trying to do an OTQ, sub 219 marathon, for me is really hard. And I've only run under 219 twice in 15 road marathons. It's a very serious goal, and I need to probably put in more time to do it. But I also have made the same mistake of just transitioning off of doing mountain running or trail ultras. And then, 2 months later, I think I'm going to OTQ, and I end up running like a 220. Or even worse, the last 2 years, I ran a couple 223s, some of the slowest marathons of my life. But, failed in 2016 by 12 seconds ultimately. Missed the OTQ by 12 seconds. Failed for the 2020 trials, which I'm still going to try on, by 50 seconds because I only ran 2:19:50 at Houston last year. But the thing is, I realized you need to do something different, right? I can't give myself more time because I'm going to do trail mountain ultra stuff in the summer. It's what I'm sponsored to do. But what I can do is maybe more 10K speed work stuff. I feel like I've gotten too far away from the speed. And that comes with some of my lesson learned at the very end of this talk. I'll give you my points on the training things that I've learned because that's probably most applicable to this type of video. But, my own failures, it's been hard. It's been hard. I've been lucky though to stay healthy, stay consistent, and have all these opportunities. But I really have no excuse. I have no excuse because I have the time to train. I have the resources, the support to travel and do these races. And I also have the luxury of we have all this information at our fingertips, right? We could look up scientific studies. We could look up what other people are doing online and how they're training. And that goes with point number 3, and this will go with things that I think have changed a lot with the social media game. Point number 3 is you question authority. Question authority and be willing to back up that with a lot of evidence, hopefully scientific-based evidence, strong scientific-based evidence. And I'll get into the validity of scientific studies when we talk more about diet, nutrition trends, and I don't want to say fad diets, but kind of that realm of things. So, you could question me, question your doctor maybe. I always say, consult your doctor before trying anything new in terms of running. That's a liability thing in the U.S., right? It's kind of a joke, but it's not really that funny. But I say that not because I think your doctor knows more about running than you or I do. It's just that's a liability basis, right? Consult your doctor. But some doctors obviously are better than others, right? It's impressive usually if people have gone through the schooling, advanced schooling to get a degree, but not all degrees are created equal, and the amount of experience is going to vary depending on the individual, right? Your doctor may be a runner, they may not be a runner at all, right? They might have the same type of diet you have, they might be against that, and there might be a personal bias in there. There could be a pharmaceutical bias in there, right? We're always looking for bias in scientific studies. So question. I always question my coaches. It's not always good because then you sometimes lose confidence in your training plan. But, question authority, question the status quo. I question a lot of things, sometimes probably too much, but I do believe in always questioning and trying to back up. Those aren't just opinions you're just blurting out. You're trying to logically state a fact and hopefully support that with evidence. It could be your opinion, could be some theory that's not proved by any party. But if you question and you want to think logically about things, you need to support your statements with hopefully a lot of evidence-based types of things. So that's my other thing. I'm digressing again. All right, so things that I think have changed a lot in the last 5 or 6 years is the social media game. The social media game with platforms like Instagram, platforms like Strava. Obviously, Facebook's been around a bit longer, and I like to joke that, Facebook's for older people now but ironically, I was one of the first people on Facebook in 2004. It was only like 10 colleges, and we were one of the first 10 colleges to get on Facebook. But, Instagram, Strava, you're playing the comparison game, and it's good and bad. It's good and bad if you're a professional sponsored athlete, or you're looking at your competition, or you're looking at what your friends or extended family members are doing. It distorts things, right? It's a comparison game. It leads to too many comparisons. You're sitting there scrolling through the feed, right? And I like to joke that Instagram is both a literal filter as well as a figurative filter, because you literally can manipulate pictures and, change the the lighting and the colors make a sunset look more epic than it really does. You're literally changing the structure and the appearance of a picture, but it also is a figurative filter because it could have been that's the best snapshot of your whole day. Or maybe it's not even an Instagram. Maybe it's a latergram. Maybe you took a picture in Hawaii when you're on this tropical island 10 months ago, but you decided to post it today. And so people see and they're like, oh, you're on vacation again on this beautiful tropical island. But in reality, maybe you're sitting at home in a corner and it's cold and snowy and dark out and you're all alone. But it's not Instagram, it's a latergram. But maybe you didn't use that hashtag. I don't know. I'm digressing again. And then with Strava, we see, athletes training at different levels and you're like, this guy's doing 120, 140 miles a week, right? 230K a week. Should I do that? I don't know. And you start questioning yourself or like, this guy I'm going to have to race. He just did this monster workout. Can I keep up? And then you think about it as you go into your own workout and it changes the variable. It changes your mindset, right? You play games with you mentally. So, the social media reach, when you have too many comparisons or you're wasting too much time at the feed, looking at the feed, addicted to the feed, addicted to your phone or mobile device, it's tricky. Guys back in the, 60s, 70s, 80s, marathon runners especially, in the US at least, they were already running under 210. We had guys running, 209, other guys running 207, 208 quite often. And so I'd say, things that haven't changed is the general training philosophy, right? Arthur Lydiard was preaching high mileage aerobic base building way before Maffetone came along, way before, Tin Man came along, right? They were doing structured periodization. They're doing high mileage, easy paced running first before doing harder intervals. They knew hills were good speed work in disguise, right? Before Frank Shorter said that, although, he's one of the legendary guys that had consistent high mileage for a decade and was able to win the Olympics in the marathon. But, the general training philosophy, I'd say, hasn't changed that much in the new decades, right? There are people that, like, with my new fancy GPS, and my heart rate monitor, I could do this and this and this. Well, it's still going to be hard work and a lot of, structured high mileage training generally. If you want to reach your full potential in a distance running race, there's different technologies with massage and weight training maybe to do things, but you can't get around that high mileage, doing those long runs, building the aerobic system, systematically over time, doing the track intervals and the speed work, doing the hitting the different energy systems, right? Getting familiar with 5K, 10K pace. You're still going to have to do all that work to reach your potential in running. And guys knew this 30 and 40 years ago. So, the training hasn't changed much. I'm going to also say diet and nutrition hasn't changed much. If you look at back to the validity of studies, people are all big on, new fad diets or new things like, let's say, keto paleo, for example. A lot of the studies, they aren't even 5 years old. A lot of the studies only go for several weeks, right? They do a 4-week study. They do a 8-week or 10-week study. And yeah, you could lose weight off of any diet. If you're in a calorie deficit, you lose water weight. You could do all sorts of things. Calorie deficit, you're going to lose weight. That's basic thermodynamics. But, we don't know the long-term effects of certain diets, of certain, we'll say minority diets, and I'm including veganism in there. And the problem is with social media amplifying these things is it builds a cult-like type of following, and you get people really ingrained in it. And, I admit as plant-based, vegan type of diet, there's a lot of that, but it's also with the other end of the spectrum with, carnivore diets or low carb, keto types of diets or paleo. Those are kind of similar relatively. But the long-term studies you want to see a study that's really long-term. I'm not just talking five years, I'm talking 10 years, 15 years, 20 years. What happens really long-term when you put your body in this diet? Well, thing with the scientific studies and validity in studies, and I have looked at quite a few of these, is that it's hard to definitively prove something with nutrition and diet. I don't care if the study's peer-reviewed. That doesn't mean anything. I look at the variables, I look at the numbers, you look at the sample size, you look at the duration, you look at bias, who's the study funded by, right? How is it performed? And when it comes to lifestyle and diet and predicting longevity, will X cause Y directly? It's going to be hard to say, oh yeah, 100% this causes this. We probably know, for example, something like, cigarettes will cause lung cancer, right? That's a pretty easy one to see. Or, drinking too much alcohol is bad for you, right? Those are pretty clear cut. but, you know, the fact of, you know, how much fiber do you really need in your diet, right? What's a good amount of cholesterol? You know, what are the differences in macronutrient needs for men and women at different stages in their lives, depending on their age and their background and their ethnicity, right? All these variables, you're looking at lifestyle factors. It's impossible to control. You have hundreds of different variables and life stressors, and it's the same thing with even your running training. There's some good general principles, but if your nutrition's not solid, if your sleep's not solid, if you've got mental stresses from work or some other thing weighing in on you, it could cause you to feel bad. It could cause you to feel more tired, run slow, feel sick, get sick. It could suppress your immune system. And I think, you know, a good thing with that is the studies that use something like a placebo effect or you know, a sugar pill. Basically, people think they're taking a medicine or a strong drug and they're actually taking nothing, but then they feel subjectively, they feel things, and that it could physically change things because they've manifested this in themselves. But I'm starting to digress again. So what has changed a lot? I mean, I could go on and on, but I want to keep this video so it's not insanely long. You know, obviously things like electric cars, right? Tesla's changed the game of electric cars. That's going way off on a tangent. But vegan food options, plant-based veganism, definitely I've seen an uptick in products worldwide. Not all of them are great products, but there's more restaurant options, more labels, more people are conscious of things like that in people's diets. Gluten-free, there's probably tons more gluten-free products even than vegan products, but I've seen this on the international stage. I've seen this in foreign countries all over the world, more vegan, plant-based types of things, people paying attention to their diet. And then also seen a lot of YouTube channels rising up. This is with the rise of social media, but running-related YouTube channels. You find them all over YouTube now, especially in the last 5 or 6 years. You got, you know, high school kids, college kids, people in their 20s, 30s, 40s, older, doing shoe reviews, doing vlogs about running, training things. A lot of the material kind of is like some of my videos. And, you know, I'll admit I've overlapped a lot of information that I like to preach. And, you know, it's because I still believe in it though, right? I still believe in the principles of, you know, aerobic base building. And these things aren't new. These are not new concepts. Again, like I've said, they've been written about and talked about, and people have been, coaches and athletes have been using them for decades and decades. They're kind of tried and true principles, so to speak. So, you know, a lot has changed, a lot has not changed. If I want to talk about shoe design, obviously I'm not doing a bunch of shoe reviews with a bunch of brands, even though I come from a design background and I worked in retail selling all brands of shoes for 3 years, specialty shoe run experience retail. You know, with Hoka, just within the brand of Hoka, obviously a sponsor, you've seen a huge variety of different shoes, right? They've got really light shoes, they've got track spikes, they've got the heavier, bulkier, thicker trail shoes with really aggressive lug patterns. They've got carbon fiber shoes, 2 different ones now. They've got, you know, 1 millimeter offset. They've got a lot of 5 millimeter offset. Changing the dynamic, changing the range of their product offering, just the growth of Hoka, that's been a big change in the last 5 or 6 years. That's just another example. All right, so finally, to close this video out, and again, I apologize for all my rants. Again, you know, question me, question authority, but be willing to support that with some real evidence. I don't want to just hear, well, in my opinion, or in my N=1 study. It's not a scientific study, that's a personal story. Personal stories could be very strong, and they're very good, but you have to put that in the context of, does this apply to the general population? Does this apply to a lot of people? You know, are a lot of people training for a marathon going to respond to this type of workout or training theory, and is it going to help them much? But lessons learned in my running and training importance, I'd say, especially with my personal journey, and again, personal story, may not always reflect directly to you, right? Your background's probably a lot different than mine in running. But for me, when I stray too far away from speed, I say you should never stray too far away from speed in training. Even if you're a long distance runner, you're doing marathons or ultra marathons, and especially if you're doing 5K, 10K and below still, is that you need some element of speed in your training. And maybe it starts with strides. Maybe it's doing, you know, some weight work stuff. That'll be actually my last point with the, you know, gym work. But never stray too far from that speed and efficiency, because it helps your running form. It helps boost your power. It helps open up the stride, increase your stride rate, your cadence, right? You could get over 200 steps a minute when you're sprinting. And that's going to help all your distance running mechanics. So, you know, you don't have to be busting track intervals 3 times a week, or even 2 times a week, but maybe you are still doing some 400-meter repeats, or you are doing some hill strides or hill sprint types of workouts. So the intensity is always there. Keep that speed there. You get a lot of bang for your buck with some intensity training, even though most of your training is probably slow aerobic base building and easy paced running. Now, my final point, final training lesson takeaway is that a little bit of strength training and flexibility work goes a really long way. And I've learned this as I've gotten older. You know, I'm in my 30s now, been running for 20 years year round, pretty much nonstop. The hips and the whole core basically is a key zone, right? As you get older, your hip flexors might get more tight. A lot of days sitting in the office or sitting in the car, you get tighter hip flexors. You start losing some flexibility. So that range of motion in the hips becomes very important. At the same time, you also start to lose some glute activation. And I found this to be true for myself. It could cause lower back pain, SI joint pain, misfiring with not using your glutes and hamstrings in the backs of your legs, and it leads to sloppy form. So, you know, a little bit of strength work, targeting specific individual weaknesses and injury prevention types of things. We're not talking about a lot of gym work here. If you devote 10 or 15 minutes a day, or even just 3 times a week after a run or before a run, that could really go a long way compared to not doing anything at all, right? You need some range of motion, you need some specific strength, and some of it's going to be individual. Not all of you are going to have problems. Maybe your trouble area is your calves, or you need to stretch out your calves more because you have a little bit of plantar fasciitis, plantar fascia tightness, right? Maybe you need to do some calf raises or something specific like that. Maybe you have problems with your IT band. You need to use a foam roller, something like that. So it needs to be specifically catered to your weakness. I find my weakness and I try to target that more so it doesn't turn into an injury, especially an overuse injury. We don't want to get a big time muscle strain that's going to take us out of the game. We don't want to get a stress fracture, a bone break in our legs or in our toes. We want to have strong tendons and muscles and bones so we could keep running and stay in the game long term for our running, but also hopefully our long term health. And that's going to be the end of my rant and lessons learned. Again, I didn't mean to go off on too many tangents there. I know I totally get caught up in things. I tend to overthink things as well. That could be another flaw in there, but hope your running's going well. Be sure to comment below with future training topics you guys would like to hear about. We'll get back more on topic with shorter videos, more concise stuff, showing you some scenes from outside and, running form tips, 5K training tips, 10K training tips, as well as my final preparations heading into the Comrades Ultra Marathon. Thank you so much for your support on here, guys. It really means a lot to me. Really appreciate all the subscriptions, shares on social media, thumbs up if you like these types of videos. Again, you can subscribe on here. Check out our training plan website, sagerunning.com. We sell plans for any surface, any distance, and big thanks to the Patreon supporters again for really making this possible. Hope your running's going well, and stay tuned for more.